All right. So, so, um, so, basically, we're going to talk about HTML5. Yeah, last time we talked about basics of HTML. I called it HTML the beginning because we talked about really early days of HTML, and um, basically, you kind of showed things that we used to have to do. I used some older school HTML techniques, things like tables embedded in tables and that kind of stuff to try to showcase how we used to have to do things. Um, basically, though, we're today we're going to talk about a lot of the new elements that are out there and why they're out there. Um, basically, what did HTML5 do? What did it bring to the table? Uh, what can we? Why should we use these certain things? That type of stuff. That's the goal, at least the goal of what we're talking about today. So yeah, I guess uh, we kind of went through the past last time. We went through the past last time. I don't think we need to really review that too much, but we did have, even before HTML5, we did have some things get brought into it. The div element is one that we still see in use a lot. I'd say I'm one of the ones who I would accuse myself of using a div when there we go, shorter doc type. There we go. One of the reasons. Yeah, very good, Bob. All right. And so, why did we do that? So what are some of the things that we should be using? How should we be doing this now that HTML5 is there? Is there a reason to use it? The answer is yes, of course. If there wasn't, why would we do it? So I think we'll go ahead and we'll kind of jump right in to screen sharing. So I'm going to go ahead and hide the chat overlay. I'll still keep it up though. Let me see. Oops. It disappeared on me. There we go. Now I can see it, but no one else can. But yeah, that way you guys can see the whole screen. So we will start with my little presentation part here. And so here we are. Let's just make sure everything still looks good. Yep, it's looking good. All right. So um, there's nothing here that looks all of that unique, all of that interesting. Actually, it looks kind of crappy. That's kind of the idea, though. The idea is to showcase the different elements, so you can see where the parts of the different elements are and things like that. I do have a little bit of styling that I've applied over here. Um, really, I don't want anyone to pay too much attention to it. I just wanted this to look at least a little bit nice and have some niceness about it, to where you can kind of see the idea behind what each of these sections is supposed to do. Now, honestly, we could have all of these in divs and they would work just the same. It would pretty much do the same stuff that we're doing here. The difference is, though, in HTML5, the reason for a lot of these comes down to accessibility. It also has things to do with SEO and things like that. So when a web crawler searches your site, if it finds a part that's in a header, then obviously it's thinking that that's the header for the site. If you see something that's a nav, then it realizes this is supposed to be nav menu items here. If you've got something inside of a main, it realizes this is the main section of the site, the main data that's actually supposed to be here. It's like I'm gonna have to go stop animals. Just a second. All right, we're back. Yes, yes, bark, bark, bark. Like I said, that's the problem with problem or the fun part about live, depending on how you look at it, I guess. So yeah, I got the main culprit here. Um, but yes, main basically then tells the in anything processing that this should be the main text that's on the site. There's another tag as well, which I was having a conversation just before here about article. Article mm, actually is used to determine like when you're in a blog site or something like that, or when you're in a news site. And if you want to mark something that this is the main content of this particular page, this is an article, it's something that's supposed to be read as an article, you can put it inside of an article tag. The concept is the same. Honestly, really is no styling differences of these items, and I'll show that here in just a minute. Um, because anything you see here is basically done by the styling over here in CSS. So all of this is what's causing it to look this way. This doesn't look this way by default. Matter of fact, I was thinking of even just to kind of prove my point, just do pretty much that. Yeah, pretty much to take this out like that and look at it. It's all pretty basic. So the site itself really doesn't have anything special about it. There is no special stylings involved in putting these tags in here. Um, about the only thing even really doing a job whatsoever is the paragraph tag here, and that's not an HTML5 tag. That's a tag that's been there for a very long time. Its purpose is to actually put space before and after, and so for each, I generated I think 5 paragraphs here just of lorem ipsum text, just to give us a decent amount of text here, so we can take a look at it. And as you can see, that's about the only thing that still has any kind of styling applied to it. So these things really don't give us anything in the way of styling, but what they do is they give us in the way of intention. And so that's the whole thing. The whole point of this is we're trying to show intention that this is what this is supposed to be. This is supposed to be header. So when a web crawler, or even when like a screen reader comes through, you can understand, oh, this is supposed to be a header, so this is the heading of the site. So the screen reader will probably tell something to the effect of, site header, and then possibly list the site header. Obviously, you wouldn't probably just have text in here. You'd probably have logos. You could have other stuff in the header. And that's also where things like role comes into play, but I'm not going down that path today. I mean, we could spend an eternity talking about roles, talking about accessibility, talking about all kinds of stuff. Today is really kind of an intro to the content elements of HTML5. I'm going to go ahead, just because you've seen this, I'll come back to this, but what I will do as well is I will jump over to another screen. And this is the one I meant to actually start on today. I was going to show what we were going to talk about. This is the content section. This right here, you guys can't see this. This is Mozilla. This is a MDM. If you go to developer.mozilla.org and looking for HTML elements, and these aren't specifically HTML5 elements. Actually, these here, probably most of these are, except for the H1 tags. Almost all of these in here are new HTML5 elements, except for these right here. I think that's it. Yeah. This is the article one I was talking about here. Basically, as you can see, it says it's basically used for news sites, syndications, blog posts, things like that. Anything where you've got a particular type of information. So you're telling the reader, hey, this is like the main content of what you're supposed to do. That's also the purpose of main too. The purpose of main is it represents the dominant content of the body of a document. So basically, you could use either. Technically, I could have used article, I guess, if I wanted to, but since it's not an article, since it's more like a landing page of my site there, I wouldn't really use article. I would use that like it says in a blog entry or something like that. That's where I would use something like article. The one I don't have in here, and I really couldn't see a use for, was aside. But aside has actually, I'll go ahead and I'll click on it and kind of show an example of what aside does. So aside, this over here, I believe, is supposed to be the part that is the aside. So it's talking over here, over here, but you have this little itty bitty side section that's kind of a side note almost. And that's really sort of the concept of aside, is a secondary note to something that's kind of put along the side as kind of a side note to something that's talked about. You've seen it in articles, I'm sure. Uh, I don't know if I've seen it as much in articles anymore, but I used to see it in articles a lot, where you'd be reading along in an article, have a little section in the paragraph somewhere where it'd say this and this and this, and it would give you a little bit further explanation, a little bit more in depth explanation as to what's being talked about here. That's really kind of the concept of what that's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a little side section supposed to be used to define what's actually being talked about. But none of these here have, very few of these have any really individual styling. And I'm going to actually, before I jump back to the main site we were looking at there just a minute ago, I am going to share one more thing, and that is going to be, I have DevTools open, and I have DevTools open on the site that we were looking at. So here is the DevTools. Now let's see if we've got it. There it is. Okay, so if you look, here's the body section of the entire site we were looking at. Here's header. As you can see, if you look, if you've ever gone into Chrome DevTools, if you haven't, first of all, you should start doing this to learn about things and figure out how things work. But this right here, if you look at any particular tag, you'll notice that there's usually something in the style somewhere called user agent style sheet. And that's basically the style sheet that's applied by the browser you're looking at, in this case, Chrome. So as you can see, the header element, the basic default styling for the header element is just display block and this little Unicode setting here, which honestly, don't ask me, I can't tell you what it is. I do know what Unicode is, but I can't really tell you what that setting does. But basically, display block doesn't really give us much. It's just the way that the element is displayed in the layout of the page. Block element means it just if you put another one, it basically goes underneath it. So that's pretty much it. So yeah, div elements, for example, are block elements. So you put something in a div, you create another div underneath it. It'll just return, and the next part will go right below it. And that's what, if you look at all of these things right here. So here's header. Here's nav. Once again, same settings, display block. These have individual settings, but that's because these are OLLI. These are list element settings. So they actually do have some actual agent style sheet stuff that actually does get applied. Hence why when I took out the CSS, you saw the little numbers beside the nav items, because that's the default display type of those items. But as you can see, nav itself does not have anything. It has nothing. It has just the block element. Main, the same thing, block element. But like I said, paragraph does. Paragraph is a block element, but it also has margins before above and below and all of that, and that's what gives us the spacing in there. But and footer, here's footer, the last one we used, once again, display block. Nothing really too concrete about it. So these things aren't providing any kind of visual change to us. We still have to style them like we do divs. We still have to have the same kind of concepts about all the other stuff that we normally do. But basically, you have used article, unless the page needs to be in a reader mode instead of a standard page. It's a good point. Oh, here, I'm going to put this. Let's see here. I've seen a side used for web apps with vertical nav bars. Here, I'm going to go and do a couple here. Here's a good post about the aside. So that's a very good point. You've seen a side used for web apps with vertical nav bars. Very good. Yeah, and that's something I was thinking as well, because I was almost wondering, do I want to do a side nav and then use the aside command? I'm like, there's so many nowadays that it's more common to see the top level menu. And so, but I agree with you that was one of the things I was thinking as well when I was building this, is should I use a side for the left nav bar on the left? It could have been done that way, and that's a very good point. And then Bob had a comment. He said he wouldn't have used article. I wouldn't have used article either, unless the page needs to be sent to a reader mode instead of a standard page. Good point. Yeah, exactly. It's just, a lot, like I said, a lot of this comes down to how SEO is going to work when it goes to search your page, what it's going to do. You're kind of trying to tell it what to do. Okay, well, this is supposed to be this. This is supposed to be this. This is supposed to be this. It's kind of helping that. It is helping in screen readers and things of that nature. Like I said, there's roles and there's other stuff like that play into it. We will go ahead now and we will go back to sharing this. So yeah, it's just what do you how do you want to do it? You can pretty much make it work any way you want to. Like I said, these all could have been divs here, and we could have just put the same amount of styling. They would have come out looking exactly the same. But because of HTML5, because of these new ways of doing things, there's a lot of new tags. We should be probably using these tags to try and tell web screen readers, and also why can't I think of it? Uh, web crawlers. There's the word I'm looking for. Web crawlers. What they're looking at, and maybe giving them some assistance in how to process our page. You know, it's going to help in facilitating those types of things, and hopefully give you a better overall results when your page goes live, that type of stuff. So really, like I said, I'm just as guilty as most everyone else. This is probably the first time I've used most of these tags. I don't think I've ever used a header tag before. I know I've never used a nav tag before. I might have used main once or twice, but I don't think I've used it very often. This is pretty much the first time I've gone through and done this as well. So, like I said, the idea, the concept behind it is first of all, these are there to help in different assistive technologies in making your website more help your accessibility rating. Sometimes your accessibility rating will improve, and that can also improve certain things in searchability and possibly even in results in the in search engines and all that kind of stuff. We really do need to try and be assistive to people who maybe can't see, who maybe have a hard time seeing, and need to use things like screen readers. The less that they have to sit there and listen to of all this of trying to jump through all these things. I've heard I've never had to see how these things work, but I've heard how these things work, and it does sound like it'd be quite annoying if you don't set things up correctly, for them to have to sit there and quite literally listen to every single tab. And it's going into the different elements and trying to figure out what the elements are, and just reading through the elements. They have to try to figure out what your site is trying to say to them. So yeah, it's probably not a bad idea to try and be as helpful as possible in those situations. Yeah, so basically that's kind of where this was going today, going down that path of teaching new things. Now, there are some really cool things with HTML5. I did want to talk about that as well, kind of as an intro to HTML5. Um, these are very simplistic things. Like I said, they're meant for layout. They're meant for assisting us in telling web crawlers how we're laying out our site, what sections belong to what assistive technologies. And but even then, if you look through if you go through the MDN site, you're going to find out that even with these new tags, sometimes you still have to put a role around them for assistive technologies. So so you need to read up on that. You can't just say just using this is going to make my site more accessible, but you need to also go through and make sure you read about accessibility, and you're up to date on it, and try to keep your accessibility score on your site as good as it can be. Um, Basically, yeah, that's kind of where this is heading to.